Crude news. Over 1,000 low-wage workers at San Francisco International Airport went on strike today in protest of crummy wages and poor benefits. Workers plan to strike through tomorrow. The San Francisco airport strike is just the latest protest from low-wage workers across the country who are finding it nearly impossible to survive and provide for their families, and thus fighting for minimum wage increases. But why stop at minimum wage increases? What if there was a way to ensure that every American had a consistent and predictable income, even if they weren't employed? Well, there is a way, and it's called a guaranteed basic income. Movements for a guaranteed basic income have been around for a while in Europe, but now the idea is gaining traction right here in the United States. To help the push for a basic income, Tree Media is working up a new documentary about basic income titled Total Freedom. Take a look.
We live in a world where income inequality has accelerated to unsustainable and destructive levels, marginalizing many, where unemployment is rising due to innovative technologies, and the exporting of jobs and low wages strand millions in permanent and oppressive poverty and stifling personal debt. We then watch as civil unrest unfolds, violence erupts.
There it goes, they're now firing onto the crowd.
But most profoundly, we lose human value, potential, and productivity, our very humanity. This must stop. But how?
Joining me now to talk more about total freedom and the idea of a guaranteed basic income is Mathew Schmid, producer, writer, and director with Tree Media and director of Total Freedom. Mathew, welcome.
Welcome, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. What exactly is a basic income? How would it work?
Well, a basic income is a grant given to every man, woman, and child from birth to death to meet their basic needs, clothes, food, and shelter.
Yeah, is that, in Alaska, they have the Alaska Permanent Fund. Everybody gets, $2,000, $3,000 a year. Is it a variation on that?
No, it is not a resource-based fund. It is more based on, I would say, the rights of the human being, the right to live, the right to life. And it's written in the U.S. Constitution, it's written in the European Constitution, and many constitutions across the nation. Everybody has the right to life, but to live, you have to have money to pay for the basic needs. So it is associated with that.
So how does this work? Everybody gets a minimum income. Are you talking about $5,000 a year or $20,000 a year, or what?
Well, in a perfect scenario, and we can work ourselves up to this amount, it can be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 a month for each individual.
Wow.
So the person would get the check, and their needs would be met, their basic needs, again, it's a basic income, would be met, and then they can go about their day and about what they would like to do with their time, and they can be productive the way they would like to.
I can see conservative heads exploding all over the country. Who's going to, in the face of this, who's going to clean the toilets? Who's going to pick the cabbage? Who's going to do the kind of jobs that right now are considered really crappy jobs that people do because they're just, they don't want to be homeless?
Well, nobody wants to do those jobs anyway. So there's two ways to go. First of all, the value of the job, the person who does the job, the value of that person has to be negotiated, the income for that person. It'll be more respectable income, an hourly wage or an income for that person. The other thing, though, is that a lot of these jobs can be really replaced, which is going to happen anyway, with modern technology. A lot of these jobs, and that's what's happening anyway. That's why we have so many unemployed, and is innovation, it can take the place.
Now, Switzerland held a nationwide referendum on this earlier this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they were talking about how much as the basic income, and how did that referendum, how close did they come in that?
Well, they got the referendum into the parliament. So the parliament has now decided that they are going to hold a public vote in 2016. The date is not clear, but in 2016, the Swiss people, the 8 million Swiss people, are going to vote for an unconditional basic income, to have it or not. And the chances, nobody knows what the chances are. This is a completely new discussion. But there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of discussion around this, and that's what's important. What's important is that
how much
the
are they
discussion
talking about
for this way of $2,800
a month.
$28 a month for each individual, and I think it's a little less for children under 18.
Yeah, remarkable. You know, it reminds me of Europe after the Black Plague. You know, a lot of people don't realize that we had the Renaissance because the Black Plague killed off a third of the people in Europe, and the consequence of that was the price of labor went through the roof, and suddenly everybody who was a poor serf became a kind of upper middle class, and people had leisure time, and they started writing poetry and doing music and doing science, and all this stuff happened that wouldn't have happened otherwise. It was, you know, it was a terrible way to get a high wage, but is that the sort of thing that you're envisioning?
Well, you know, this is exactly what we're looking at with exploring with the film Total Freedom. You know, the conversation in America around the basic income is not really existent, and I think the big thing is because it's being put on this social, you know, into this, it's thrown into the social or communist corner. But if you ask me, giving millions of Americans money so they can participate in life and in the economy is like a stimulus package for the people. It's giving a grant for each individual to say, okay, here my needs are met, but what am I going to do? What do I want to bring as an individual to the economic life? What ideas do I have to innovation? What do I want to bring? I don't need, you know, all I need is the time and the muse and the thoughts and the encouragement by my community, which is in this case the government giving me the basic income, is to come up with incredible new work. And you know, Tom, I believe that human beings want to work. Humans are meant to work. Their expression in their lives is to work. So now we liberated that because we're not tying it to some income. Their basic needs are met, and I really believe that work is going through the roof, and it's going to be productive. It's going to be charismatic work, meaning every individual can bring what they have to the table. It's going to be manifold. It's going to be a revolution of work, which everybody's afraid of. Oh, people are going to be lazy if they're going to be paid a basic income.
Yeah, I think most Americans.
And remember, a basic income, Tom, is a basic income. It doesn't pay for anything beyond. The idea is really to take the edge of people's, you know, how am I going to pay my next month? Oh my God, I don't know. I've got to take a job. I got to do a couple of odd jobs, you know, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think most Americans don't realize that Thomas Paine proposed this at the founding of our republic. This is an old American idea.
Right, and it's an old American idea, and I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's a very American idea. It's a stimulus for the economy, and it is a rights issue. It is going to right-size, you know, it's going to give the right to life. It's going to give the income for the right to life, and it's an incredibly powerful tool to solve all the issues that we have. Or 8 out of
Matthew, we're out of time.
Issues
Yeah, I'm with you. We're out of time, but is there a website to send people to?
Yes, it's called Basic Income for All, and go there. We'll
BasicIncomeForAll.org?
.com.
.com.
BasicIncomeForAll.com, and we'll have lots of materials there for people to research and get into it.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Matthew Schmid. Great to have you with us.
Thanks.